All right, Amplified Impact. I'm so excited to be back today for another episode because I have a very special guest with us today, Chelsea Renee. And if you're watching on YouTube, then her precious baby boy who's sleeping on her chest. Chelsea is a somatic mentor to new earth leaders. She loves to do retreats and ceremonies. I'm super inspired by the work that she does, and I can't wait to see where this conversation goes because just as you are getting to know her and what she does in the world, so am I. Enjoy. Thank you for being here, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me here, Amber. I'm really excited to see what magic comes out of this conversation with us.
Yeah, me too. And my favorite part is just like, where did your journey begin? And we can go back to the beginning, but like, how did you get here into like knowing this is what you're meant to be doing right now?
Yeah. So I've always been the kind of human that is always doing something in the area that I love. And so I never kind of went into a typical job, if you will, but I was going into different fields. Like I went into the cannabis industry and then I went into the outdoor industry because I'm like, I love plant medicine, I love nature. And I was a photographer for years and years. And I got like training in that from college. And all of those things, I was just like, oh, this isn't just quite it. And it got to this point where I was in the outdoor industry and I just felt this disconnection from who I was. And I felt purposeless and confused. And I got to this point where I was crying after work every day. And I'm like, I work in this beautiful place and I love it. And like, it's not about nature. It was just how I felt inside. It was this misalignment that I had. And basically I decided I have to leave this job and I have to dedicate time to getting to know myself on a much deeper level, and I just need to know who I am and what my purpose is and all of those big life questions that are really hard to figure out. um and so I did it. I just like stopped everything and I dedicated for a year. Ended up just me in practices, in meditations, exploring different modalities, going to retreats and trying to discover more levels of who I was. And in that, I started to really have a deeper relationship with my intuition and started to like get hits from my own self and the divine, the universe, and just was like, okay, I'm meant to do this and this and this. And one of those things was like host a women's circle. I got this like clear like guidance. I was like, host a women's circle. I didn't know what that was. I had experience holding space before in a different capacity, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll invite some women over and we'll see what happens. And what ended up happening was really beautiful. And it kind of was the beginning of a roller coaster of hosting retreats and teaching other people how to hold space and coaching and becoming a breathwork facilitator and facilitating other magic. And so it just kind of continued. So that was my beginning of my journey, really.
Yeah, I love always the similarity in journeys of those we attract because I too started in like the cannabis industry and like natural medicine and then moving into yoga and then the evolution of just like holding space and leading retreats and then helping others to lead retreats. And it's like that one whisper of like, there's something more for you out here that like I'm missing something, that longing. Like I felt that in my body too, as like, there's something more for me here. And I think that it's like the butterfly effect or the constant unraveling. It's like, even now, as you're stepping into motherhood, I'm sure you're finding like a new version of this role that you're becoming. And there isn't just like, some people like, how do I know? It's like, I don't know that there's ever just this one thing because it's a constant human journey. And something that I want to just like chat with you about, as right now I'm going through a Kundalini cleanse and cleansing the liver and doing a lot of breath work. Why breath work, and what have you noticed in the impact in your life and your business incorporating more breath work into your daily life and routine?
Yeah, this is a beautiful question. Feel like I get it a lot. It's like, what did you end up on breath work? And I think every person has different modalities that end up resonating with them. And breath work was just it for me. Like I loved meditation, but I could get into that gap space that people are seeking in meditation um, much more quickly, and I felt like the clarity and the wisdom and the connection to my own intuition was just more accessible when I was doing breath work. And there's obviously so many different kinds of breath work. And so I ended up actually getting like certified in three different types, and it still was like this doesn't quite hit for me. And so that's how I accidentally ended up creating my own breathwork technique. And now I, certify and teach people that. But it's funny, like I have so many people in my realm or clients, and they're like, "Oh, I just don't like breath work." I'm like, "Well, there's like hundreds, maybe even thousands of kinds of breath work out there. Like maybe you didn't like that one style. Like, it's like kind of being like, "Oh, I tried a vinyasa yoga class and I don't like yoga." It's like, "Did you try
Mhm.
restorative? Did you try yin?" Like there's so many different variations of these modalities. And so I guess to answer your question, really, it's like breath work for me just really opened up so much more in my heart, in my soul. And I still like exploring different kinds because I think every different kind I kind of unleash something new. So um yeah, it's just a very comforting modality for me and
Yeah.
expanding and uncomforting.
It's literally all of the things, and there's, like, so many different breathwork techniques, and there's so many different modalities that get us to the same place, and what I love about this is, like, "No, I don't like yoga. No, I don't like exercise. No, I don't like breathwork," but that's like saying, "No, I don't like food," right? Like, you have
Yeah.
to really find what works for you, and always in the resistance to something, there's medicine, and what I found too is like before I had a baby, I hated Kundalini. I was like, who would do Kundalini? Why are we doing this so much? And then after my baby, it was the medicine. So it's like also the breath work for the right time and the right place on where you're at in your life. And also like I think about breath as like, how can I be more alive? So bringing more life into your body for more clarity and more peace and all of the things that breath work takes us into. It's like that space in between. What do you think for your breath work and like what you didn't like in other breath works? Like what do you think that you brought in or like you were craving in breath work that wasn't there that makes your modality different?
Yeah, so basically the the breathwork certifications that I did, it felt very much like here's a technique and this is how, like, it felt very like masculine and like structured of like this is what it is and here. And so I felt like for me there, just in the teaching of it too, just this first thing that pops to mind of like actually teaching how to hold space and how to open a space and how to like safely like allow people to get into those depths, because breathwork can really take you some places, but if you don't even feel like comfortable enough in your own body to just like have your safety there, then you're not going to go to those places. So that was one thing like in the teaching element that I felt was really needed. And for the breathwork technique itself, I ended up just kind of, and I didn't have an intention of like, I want to create a breathwork technique. I was just like, I want to do something for myself because I like elements of this, elements of that. And I also like tapped into my intuition. And like a big element that I brought in was this connection to spirit, ancestors, spirit guides, and like connecting with your own intuition. And that was like a, you know, a part of the anatomy of the technique, and also a huge focus on opening up the heart before you even begin with the breathwork technique. Because again, like kind of bringing yourself into that safety, into like that connection with yourself. Um, and then there was like some logistical elements that I added in, like a breath hold here, and um, just like the cadence of the way that the breath um, like comes up, like, and there was some, one of the techniques that I was trained in, it's kind of was like rolling hills, like you're going up and then down and then up and then down, and I was like, I kind of like the journey of like climbing up a mountain and getting to the very top and then like coming down. And so different elements like that. And it wasn't until one of my one-on-one clients was like, she was exploring a lot of different breathwork techniques herself, and she asked me what technique I did, and I was like, I just like kind of made something up. Like I was like, this is what I do for myself. I recorded like 5 different sessions that I just would use myself. And she's like, well, our next call, like, would you want to just like, do like make one for me? And so I did it. And when she gave me feedback of how like transformative it was for her, and that was what she had been searching for and looking for, I kind of realized like, oh, maybe I do have something here. Like, so it really, I think I'm a projector too, so like I just kind of do things, and then like people are like, can you do this breathwork for me? And then I'm like, oh, there's something here. And that's kind of how it like rolled until it was like officially born, I say, when I had to give it a name, because one person that had experienced it at a retreat that I was invited to facilitate at worked at a festival in Bali, and they're like, "Can you come and bring this breathwork to like this festival?" And I was like, "I don't even have a name for it." And they're like, "Well, you're gonna have to have a name, and you're gonna have to have a description." And then I was like, "Okay." So that was like the official birth of it, when like months I had been already kind of bringing it to my community in small ways. So um I never had the intention, it was just kind of pulled out of me. Yeah.
And I really love that too, because it's like for those of you that are listening, it's like the next thing might not be something you think about, but just through what it is you're doing, like it's going to be planted in such an authentic and natural way that, like you were saying, connecting to spirits and guides, and there's a higher power, there's something bigger here that's like your path is so divine, and the unfolding of your life and your business doesn't always have to have like a plan and a vision. It's just through the action that you're taking, and the way in which you're serving, that the next thing comes through someone telling you or through someone asking you about it. You're like, oh, there's something here for me, which is actually how I created the Sold Out Retreat mini course that has served thousands of people, is because I was in a mastermind and I ended up coaching the coach and the client in the DM, like in the chat box, just like supporting them. They're like, Amber, why don't you have a retreat course? And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. And it was just like, that's the power of us just like being in our lives, and then like someone else like reflecting back to us our gifts, which is, I'm a projector as well. And that's something that, happens, but it's also like God, source, universe doing that for those of us that are in the flow and in alignment in our lives. And I think it comes through too, also in like a song that comes on, or a friend that says something to you, or when you open your phone. And yeah, I would love to know more about your journey in hosting retreats and bringing women together, because I know there's so many listeners here that do hold space and do lead retreats. And yeah, just your unfolding in that like little whisper of like host a women's gathering, and then the magic that unfolds from that little desire of like bring amazing people together and transform their lives in a small week.
Yeah, okay. Before I answer that question, one thing when you were sharing your response that came through is like, a lot of times in our like world and society, we have this kind of expectation of like, you are getting to this place, and like so you have like this end goal. And I think that what's beautiful in our journeys and what a lot of people are starting to realize is like, if you don't worry about that end goal, you actually end up in a crazier, much more aligned, much more beautiful place than you would have ever even dreamt up. Like that end goal actually ends up kind of becoming this like ceiling, like stopping you from where you could go. So I just love that. And that is exactly what happened with this, going from host a women's circle to what I do now, which is like hosting retreats and all of the other things. And so that journey really, it, um, basically I hosted my first women's circle and I realized how much like connection and like beautiful synchronicities ended up happening by connecting these women at first. And I just kind of continued to be like, all right, let's come every full moon, let's come together and let's see what magic happens. And I at that time was a little bit more into like what the energies of full moon are happening, and inviting us into those astrological frequencies. And then I ended up where it was only for women. And so there's actually a couple men in my field that were like, we see what you're doing over here. We want part of this. Like we want to, play with this. And so I hosted another gathering that was for everybody. And so I was having like two gatherings a month. They were getting sold out. And then someone was like, I think you should host a retreat. Again, the whole invitation by others for being a projector, which is so beautiful. And I was like, you know what? I would love to. And I'm like, obviously had a love of the outdoors, love of connecting with nature. And so I was like, I want to do this. And I planned it pretty quickly. And my first retreat, 9 people came, and then I hosted another one. The first one was in July and the next one was in November. So however many months was that was. And I had 13 women. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to totally send it. And I'm going to sign a contract for a 20-person retreat, like multiple 5 figures that I'm just like putting on the line. And I just believe in myself and I know what I can do. And I had felt the power and the magic I had created with those 2 retreats. And then shortly after ended up being like so crazy and like deciding to collaborate with another woman, same retreat center, same kind of contract. So I was like and those were 6 weeks apart. So I had 2 Costa Rica international retreats, 20 women contracts, and ended up attracting 22 women into the first and 19 into the other. So it was just one of those, like, I just believed in myself. I had no idea how I was going to make the magic happen. I didn't know the women that were going to come. I also was like starting to live all over the world. So didn't have like a community base anywhere specifically anymore. I was like feeling very called to live in Hawaii and Ecuador and Bali, and then, travel the United States. So I was really all over the place, but I was very like determined and grounded in my vision of like, I'm bringing women together. This is my calling and I feel this. And like you said too, like I know this is still my calling right now, but I'm also really unattached to if this like my calling evolves, which
Mhm.
is kind of cool part of this journey. So that's kind of how the retreats began. And I think what's really special and one of my favorite things about hosting my retreats is like really letting my intuition guide. And I have like a plan for the first day of like what's going to happen and how we're going to kind of open up our hearts, open up to each other, our sisters in the space. And then I'm really like tuning into the women that are come together and like seeing like what does this group actually need. I've realized like if I plan something, I'm actually just holding on to something of what I'm expecting to happen, when I need to listen to these women and see it. So I've hosted retreats that end up going into a lot of like inner child healing or like body image and like self-love and generational trauma, like all these different like journeys that we've had. And it's bringing it back to those modalities, like all of these different things I've explored into, modalities and even experiences, workshops, like allowed me to kind of like become like I have this huge toolbox full of all these tools. And I'm like, oh, all I just have to do is tune into what these women want. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing the same theme over and over again at dinner or lunch. And that's what the next workshop will be. Okay, we'll do this. And so it's really magical. I really love it. And yeah, I just love letting the channel flow.
Mm. Yeah, and as you were speaking, like I just kept feeling like this unwavering confidence and self-belief in your path unfolding. And I think that's a really special thing to have when it comes to hosting retreats because like it literally never can go as planned. And just as you were saying like before, it's like when you let go of the plan, the manifestation of what actually unfolds is way better than we could ever plan or even predict. And so when we can come into that space of unwavering confidence and like the plan is going to unfold as it should, we are literally freeing ourselves from like disappointment, like holding on, like trying to control. And like, I know for me, that's something I really had to work on is like letting go of control and trusting and how it unfolds. And I'm curious for you, like before you got into breath work, before you got into leading women's retreats and hosting gatherings, like did you always have this like unwavering confidence and self-belief in yourself and what you were meant to do? Or is it something that you have cultivated over time?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely there are versions of myself where I was more confident, but before I really stepped up into all of this, um, I kind of like what I shared at the beginning, like I felt so disconnected and I didn't feel confident. I felt confused and I built that self back up into like the inner knowing and the inner trust that allows you to even be confident by tuning into myself through these kinds of modalities and like taking that time and really like dedicating myself and saying like I am this is a priority for me. And like one thing I sorry, this is a little off base, but like one thing that's coming through is like I even like turned one of my living rooms completely into like my goddess space where I'm like, this is how much of a priority like tuning into myself is. I'm literally have an entire, room of my house like that is dedicated to me just tuning into myself and me learning how to love myself and reconnect with myself again. And um it's as I feel like a lot of moms sometimes are like, the story is like, oh, you're in survival or you're struggling at the beginning of becoming a mom because it is such an evolution and identity shift. But I've like,
Yeah.
because of all the work that I've done before that, I just feel like this is just beautiful and I love it. And I have the tools to kind of lean into. And so I'm still that confident self, even when I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Mm.
But I think like just the other thing that you're sharing in response is um sorry, I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. The Anytime I've started to feel where I've had like started to get too rigid in my life of like this is the way things need to be or like this has to look this way, kind of like the control that you were talking about, that's when I realized like I need to loosen the grip and kind of let life flow. And um I think that's also part of like being uh in these modalities. Like I had this like, oh, I have to meditate 45 minutes a day, twice a day at these times. Like I had that rigidity. And then at one point I was like, okay, this rigidity is actually getting in the way of the magic.
Mhm.
And so same thing with retreats of like, oh, this needs to look this way. It's like, oh, you have to let go of those things so you can let that magic flow. And so anytime I've noticed that in my life or offerings or whatever, that's when I'm like, oh, it's getting too tight. I need to loosen the grip and kind of let spirit take over and just allow myself to be open to what's meant to be.
Yeah, and I think that's so relatable of like, I'm gonna eat a certain way, I'm gonna do a certain exercise, I'm gonna run my business a certain way. We like get so caught up in the masculinity of it that we forget about the femininity and the flow and like allowing things to grow and evolve. And it can happen in our relationships and in our marriage. And if for me, I know like being a mother is like, it's a completely new identity. Yet sometimes like I go and pick up my son from school and I'm like, I'm a mom. Like I like it still hasn't happened. And that's like 2+ years in. But I just think that like when we've done so much work on ourselves that it's like we just know what to do to like find center inside of ourselves. And I really love this conversation around like having a toolbox because I think that like as leaders and women who are here to have impact, it's like you get to have a full toolbox and like it doesn't have to be one certain way every single day, but literally just like checking in and like what's going to bring me back to that place of remembering who I am, why I'm here, what I'm meant to do, and like get rid of all the like the human noise. And it's like this conversation between like spirit and human, and who are we letting run the show rather than like the feminine and the masculine, like how can they merge together? Because there are so many tools, and sometimes it's just as easy as like closing your eyes and taking a few breaths. And other days it's like I need a 45-minute meditation, but like as moms, like that is very rare. I mean, in the newborn stage, it sometimes can be easier. It's actually I'm curious for you, like what people have told you, and the truth and the reality for you is like everyone told me like, oh, the newborn stage is the hardest, and then like this stage is the hardest, and then it gets easier, and like I'm going through it. I'm like, every stage is easier and harder at the same time. Where like the newborn stage for me felt so hard, and now I have a toddler, and I'm like, that was so easy. So I'm just curious for you, like what you expected, and then like the initiation of it, and now like 3 months and being into a mother, like what tools are you pulling out of your toolbox maybe that you didn't think you would use, and how has that like really helped you to, take that identity as mother?
Yeah. I I don't have a lot of women in my field that are moms. Recently, I've started, expanding into that, becoming a mom myself. But one of the biggest things I think like people were just like, yeah, you're going to be surviving and like this. And it wasn't even like this only period. It was like basically until they were in school is kind of like the energy I felt that I've heard from other moms. And it's and also just like, oh, you lose yourself. Like that's another big part of like you don't know who you are anymore. And I feel like for me, and again, I'm like, 3.5 months into this, so I'm fairly new. So I also know that I could be contradicting myself and what I feel will be true, a month or a year or 5 years from now. But I think this is actually just adding to my life and expanding into my life. And yes, like the hard things, sure, there's a couple hard things, but it's just stretching my capacity to hold more space. And I think like because I have almost this like some could call it like toxic positivity where I'm just like everything like is happening for me. Like I really do feel that and believe that. And like even the other morning, like he like for the first time ever like pooped where it like sprayed everywhere and I had to clean it up and then like clean it up and then he did it like again as I was like changing the next diaper and I was like I had this moment where I was like, this day is going to be horrible. And then I like immediately after I was like, why would I decide that that's my reality? Like, why would I choose that? And instead, I'm going to choose that it's all just going uphill from here. Like this was the bottom of the day and it ended up being a really beautiful day and I know years ago it would have been like this is the fucking worst. Like I just hate it. And so um I think it's been kind of hard for me too, um, to relate to a lot of other moms that I've been connecting with in person recently because I feel like all all they want to share is like in like they want to commiserate together. They just want to focus on
Mhm.
what's tough and they want to complain. And like I really don't feel like there's much to complain about. Again, I'm only 3.5 months in, so who knows? But like I really feel like so much love for this time. And I feel like I'm ending up triggering some women because I also have a husband who is like insanely supportive, and like he has made sure that I get good sleep because he knows how important sleep is for me. And I think that's another big part that I want to like acknowledge, like when you're sleep deprived, like that is not, it's just not a good place to be in. So I know a lot of moms don't have that support or don't have a husband who's like literally stepping up to the plate and like gets home from work and he's like, you need sleep, go to sleep right now and I'll take the baby for the 2 hours before he goes to bed, and so you can get a couple extra hours. And so like i I'm in a really like beautiful situation. Again, I've created that life for myself by like, and my husband and I, like we created that partnership where we can like lean into and depend on each other and ask for what we need. And um yeah, so I'm like, can't remember exactly what your question was at the beginning, but I think like in essence, I haven't heard that any specific time is the hardest. I think I've actually heard actually that the toddler stage when they're like running around and being crazy. But I'm like hoping, I see these Montessori videos where they're like cooking their own breakfast. I'm like, I think I'll just channel him into that because like my husband and I like we're big foodies. And so I'm like, I think he'll just be like eating food and making food with me in the morning. So again, like I'm already starting to plant those seeds to create that reality and not like, I think like the more that you expect things are gonna look a certain way, that's the way they'll like turn out. And so I'm just like really optimistic about what the future is going to hold.
Yeah, and I love this so much about like witnessing when the human thought comes up, today is going to be a horrible day, and being like, wait, why would I decide that because this happened? Because that happens to us when we're launching a program and it's crickets. Oh, no one's going to buy. That happens like when we launch something and only one person reaches out and they don't buy. That happens when we create a post and it's crickets. It's like we plant these seeds of like, and we make it mean something about ourselves or our business or our path rather than being like, this actually means nothing about what the day is going to bring. This actually means nothing about the end result of XYZ. And it's just like personal power. And I think when being a mom, personal power is so important. I just want to, yeah, highlight what you said. Like, I too am like, I had a husband, I have a husband that is so supportive. And so if you're a single mama, like your best is going to be way different when you're doing it alone. And since becoming a mother, I've just had so much more respect for single mamas because I'm like, I could not do this alone. Like, I literally couldn't. And so my heart goes out to all the single mamas out there because it's just a different story. Because sleep deprivation, like, literally changes psychologically how we show up in our emotions within our body. And I think that's even why it's more important to have the toolbox, because if we're not pulling upon just like switching a belief or switching the way we feel about something, like we're literally just like going down the negative spiral hole rather than like choosing to like go in the other direction when something goes in like how we don't want it to. And I think that that is motherhood. And another thing that you pointed out that I think is crucial to bring back is just like having other people who like get you, other than like you said, like the moms that just get together in negativity. So it's like, are you hanging out with people in your business that are just talking about how it's not working? Are you hanging out with people that are just talking about how like the relationship is horrible? Like, who are you hanging out with and what conversations are being had? Because like, I know for me, I don't want to be in conversations like that because it brings me down. And then you going back into old habits of like focusing on the negative rather than like, I get together with my mamas and we're like, yes, this was hard, but like, yes, this is the greatest gift of my life. And we get to normalize how quickly our emotions change in being a mother, and being able to be around other mothers and be like, I'm not crazy for this. Oh, this is happening to you at two, because my son Amani too, he is in the kitchen with me, but like Chelsea's in the kitchen with me, like, wanting to play with my sharp knife, like mama's knife, and I'm like, "No, like, that knife you can't have." So it's like I give him his special knife, and he always wants my special knife, and I'm like, "No." And my husband's, like, a little bit more, like, cautious than me, and so I have him in the kitchen and all the things, and that brings up danger too, but actually, like, what I've been really noticing is, like, if babies hang out with babies, they do baby things, but if babies hang out with us, they wanna do what we do, and it's, like, this level of, like, it forces us to slow down and be present in the moment with our children so that they can learn with us rather than us just going through all the things, and so that's been a really big, gift for me is just, like, incorporating him in everything that I do because A, he's learning faster, and B, it helps us pass the time. But Chelsea, I literally just from the bottom of my heart want to thank you. I know that we could be here for hours. Like so much has literally overlapped. You've brought so much depth to the conversation here. And I know you also too have your newborn. So I want to be respectful of your time. Those that are, I know they are deeply desiring to come and find you, follow along on your motherhood and your journey here. Where do you hang out most and anywhere you would like to direct them?
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, it's crazy over here right now. So my favorite place to hang out is on Instagram, and you can find me at the Chelsea Renee. And I also have heartcenteredhumans.com. That's where you can find like my coaching offerings and retreats and other in-person events that I'm cultivating. And the somatic is where you can learn more about my breathwork technique and learn more about holding space and becoming a breathwork facilitator. So that's, yeah, those are the main spots.
And I will plug all of those in the show notes for you. If you are listening and you found some nugget of gold here and you want to screenshot this, tag Chelsea and I, let us know what really landed in your heart, not to be a silent follower, but just to help make more bigger ripples in the world. It means the world to us. And Chelsea, one last question before you go. What does it mean to you to amplify your impact?
I think that for me, okay, amplifying your impact is really about tuning into yourself and trusting those nuggets of wisdom, that intuition that's coming through, because you know that it is an extension of the divine. And you know that when you act and when you move based off of your soul's calling and your purest truths, that you end up creating a ripple that is so powerful, so beautiful, and so impactful for your community. And so, yeah, that's
Mm. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Talk to you on the next episode. Bye.